Love that introduction.
Welcome everybody to Tasty Tuesdays with me, your host Lorene Hughes, and my gorgeous, amazing, beautiful friend and guest tonight, Tanya Aria Benlow. Hello, darling.
Hello. Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to be on.
Thank you for coming back. We're, of course, going to be talking about something just slightly different tonight. So many of you already know our sort of general format for our first time when guests come on to play with us, and then the second time they come in, we go a little bit more specialized, a little bit less general, and we just have a lot more fun, I think. So tonight, what Tanya and I are going to be talking about is, it's coming up to Christmas time. And this silly season, as we like to call it, can get very, very tough for people who have had disabilities, or people who are alone or lonely, people who are healing from acquired injuries, and all that sort of thing, and how these injuries and disabilities and stuff can affect those family relationships, how it can affect the person spiritually, physically, mentally, and how that also impacts on this time of year. And that willingness to get out and about and be with family can be incredibly difficult. Yep. So this is sort of the area that we wish to talk about tonight, and to have a look at Tanya's recovery process. So I'll get her to talk a little bit in a moment about what her injuries were and how she sort of ended up in the position of having somebody with a permanent disability, and how she's actually choosing to move through that and to make the best of her life possible, even at this crazy ass time called Christmas.
That's so true. That's really true. So where do we start? What would we like to start with?
So let's have a chat about your injury. Let's have a chat about that.
Yep. My first one that I had started 2000.
Yeah. Let's start with that one and move forward from there.
So I always look at these things, life, and how these things occur and why do they happen to us. And quite often it's you've wished for something. I wished for something, and it slowed me down, and or it's to teach you a lesson. So I took my first major injury as a lesson to learn a lot of things, to slow myself down. So what I was doing at the time, I left Adelaide in year 2000, and we moved up to Cairns. We got a transfer with my work. I was the area manager for a food manufacturer called Simple Australia, and I was heavy lifting in and out of the boot of the car all the time. So anything weighed between 20 kilos and 120 kilos, and we used to travel the whole region of far north Queensland, doing trade shows, cook-ups with all the restaurants, chefs in the hotels and things like that. It was a great fun job. But one afternoon, just lifting the most minor thing out of the car, I thought I'd just pulled the muscles in my back, but I actually blew the discs in my lower back. And so I spent 6 months off work. I physically, for the first sort of 6 weeks or 8 weeks, I couldn't get myself off the bed at all. My husband called ambulances, and they came to the front door and left without me. Wouldn't take me to the hospital because they didn't want to touch me. Because I was a bit of a basket case. And my husband used to drive me to the doctors every afternoon for pethidine shots at 4 o'clock when he got home every night so I could sleep. So it was a pretty rough ride for the first sort of 6 months, and then I turned a corner and started rehab, and about another 6 months after that I started back at work, just doing a bit of part-time work back with the company I was with. But 2 years later the discs died in my lower back. And just one afternoon, I just went, did something very minor and just thought, I'm done. That was it. I went home thinking I probably won't be able to get up tomorrow. And sure enough, I couldn't. So, but during that time, I had actually gone and done a lot of rehab work, had done a lot of strengthening. So, but the next... didn't
Just
expect.
to interrupt you for just a moment, for those people out there who are not so up with their biology, can you explain what you mean by the discs in your back?
Sure. So, where your hips sit, so your two big bones where your hips are. So in between all the discs that go up your spine, you can look on it on a thing. So you've got the little like elephant knob ears that come out. The discs are what looks like an egg yolk that sits inside it. And you don't know these things until you actually research it, because we had to do a lot of research. And the disc looks like an egg, and there's a disc that sits in between each of those, and
the vertebrae.
Inside your vertebrae. And so I had prolapse discs, which meant the discs were flattened and they're compromised and pushing out to the right hand side, so it caused extreme sciatic nerve pain down the legs and pain and things like that. So
when we have the spinal cord, because the spinal cord goes all the way down the center, right, through all the discs and everything. So if one of those little discs is gone out this way, it's pulling the spinal cord in a wonky position. Would that be correct?
No, it doesn't move the spinal cord. The spinal cord stays straight, and it sits in front of the discs. And the discs sort of sit in just right in behind it. So to start with, mine pushed. They usually prolapse to the left or the right. And then after sort of 6 months, they had actually moved in, and then it became a bulging disc into the spinal cord. So it was then pushing pressure into the spinal cord. So the spinal cord itself doesn't move with the disc. So it's just the egg pushing against. If you think about it, that's how it sort of is. And they are made up majority of all water as well. So when you do an MRI or an X-ray on your spine, you'll see that there's like these white round, sections about, sort of as thick as your finger through there. And that is the discs that you see through there. And they require, which we didn't know at the time, a lot of water. So I was working out on the road as a sales rep, and I probably wasn't drinking enough water at the time, living in Cairns in far north Queensland. So I was probably very dehydrated, which actually could have also been a component of why the injury may have exacerbated or caused. But it is basically a repetitive strain injury from lifting heavy things all the time. So I think that was in January, February 2004. I stopped working, and then I had my first spinal fusion done in April 2004. Where they took the discs out. So they go in through the front, very major surgery. They remove all your lower organs to be able to get into the base of the spine from the front. And
I just think about being on the surgery table. Imagine you can see above and all of your guts is sitting outside of you. Like, how disconcerting would that be?
Not a nice thought. So it's pretty invasive surgery, like, probably the worst of the worst, having to actually take everything out. Comes with a lot of complications as well, if they nick different things. There's vascular surgeons, doing the surgery with them and everything. It was an 8-hour surgery. And so they put a cage in, but when I woke up, I just could not stand up. So the facet joints, which is basically where they took the disc out, they put a metal cage in there, but the rest of the bones were just hitting and moving on each other, which was causing a lot of pain. So for the next, 4 or 5 months, I couldn't stand up, couldn't walk or anything like that. I still had to lay flat on my back on my bed, had to be fed from bed. Basically, Dale could pick me up, stand me in the shower, wash and dry me, dress me, and put me back to bed. And so I was in bed 24 hours a day, staring at a dot on the ceiling wall, which I knew was there for a year. I was staring at that dot. So, and coming with that, I had a big fight in my hands as well, because it was a work cover claim to go and have the second surgery. So we went and saw 24 different surgeons around the countryside. Work cover flew us to Brisbane, to many states, to be assessed, because I needed to have rods put down my spine to stabilise it. And so they didn't want me to have the surgery, but I fought really hard to have it, because I thought that was the only way I was going to be able to stand up, is to have that stability in the spine. And it was worth the fight. So and I had a lot of counselling because I was very suicidal as well. Really didn't see that there was any point in living, because I was not in a good way. And I was told I was never going to walk again. I'd be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. So The next surgery worked really well, and I remember standing up at a surgery within a couple of hours of waking up, and the nurses came in freaking out, wanting to know what I was doing standing up. And I said, I just felt the urge to get out of bed and stand up, and they just couldn't believe it. So
Wow.
I went on the warpath of recovery after that. In the gym 5 days a week. I had water rehab 3 days a week. I had enormous multiple complications with the surgery as well, because they when they do bone grafting like this, they take all the bone out of your hip. So they had quite a big long cut across my front of my left hip, where they took all the bone out of, and they severed all the nerves in my left leg. So I have no use of my thigh muscle in my left leg either. And they also severed some nerves inside the base of my spine, which stopped any heat regulation in my left leg as well. So when I woke up from the first surgery, I had no use of my left leg at all. It was like it had been completely severed off. I had no feeling in it, and I had no use of it whatsoever. Couldn't move my leg or my feet. And
no wonder the nurses were freaking out.
yeah, that was on the first surgery, but the second surgery I was a bit better. But I still,
Right.
Having that second surgery put me back again. So I had to start all over again with the rehab. So I spent the next 3 years of really intensive rehab. Took 6 months before I was out of a wheelchair, I'd say. I was using 2 walking sticks until 12 months after that. And my husband and I have been together for 26 years now. So we got married in 2005. So we put the wedding off many times because of all of this. And I finally got to walk down the aisle with him one day and kick the walking sticks just at the start of the aisle so I could walk down. That was a big feat. But
yeah.
Just the rehab, if you talk about anybody that goes through these things, it is tough time. And, a lot of people are going through this. I help a lot of people that are going through spinal injuries, just having someone to talk to. And I'm in the pool all the time. I still do rehab every day, every week, just because I'm fully recovered. I still have to keep working on keeping my spinal strength, my posture strength, my leg strength, and everything, because when you lose something like that, you realize how hard you have to keep working at it, and it just becomes your daily routine. And as soon as you stiffen up or get sore, I get straight back into it, and I push myself more, and that makes me feel better. So I have regular massages. So it's about, and I go and see Lorene, so I have healing as well. So it's a really big part of rehab, no matter what your rehab is, whether it's small or large surgery or injury, is focusing on your health and wellness. Because it's so easy to get into the mindset of, if everything's just at its worst state, and the hardest thing is when you're in something major surgeries and things like that, or major injuries, is wondering to know if you're ever going to go back to work. Am I going to earn an income again? And, my husband and I went through, even though I was on a big work cover claim, that first one, we went through a stage, we'd bought our house a year early before that happened, but it put us under immense financial strain. We were lucky that we never had kids, and it was just the two of us with our incomes. But you realise you have to really prepare for your future. And I would love to maybe come back and have a conversation around this another day, because I think it's something a lot of people really need to know, and that is how to have their superannuation set up correctly. That's the first thing I talk to a lot of people. They do not have that set up properly. They don't know what they don't know. So if you guys think that this might be a good conversation, let Lorene know, comment on it, and, I'd love to actually have that conversation with you guys about what should you know. So I have done, I've had a second major injury, which I fell downstairs in 2018 at work, and had very, very serious injuries out of that one as well. So that made me realise that after that first one, once I went back to work, I went back to a normal life. 5 years after, it did take a while, but it was worth persisting. And I got to go back to work full time and earn a great income, set ourselves up financially. But the main thing I did do was I set myself up again for something else if something went wrong, and it did. So I think a lot of people, when I talk to a lot of people, they say that they've had an accident or an illness or sickness, and I say, do you have insurance? Do you have income protection insurance? And 9 out of 10 people don't. But 9 out of 10 people don't know you should have it. You can actually have it inside your superannuation.
Mm-hmm.
So my second major injury, I was lucky I was able to tap into that. And it wasn't until about 9 months down the track we found out it actually should have been a work cover claim. So we had it all reversed. We went to the work cover tribunal, had a bit of a fight in our hands, and we had it all approved. And so we had everything reversed. But what I was really lucky about was to making sure that the new superannuations that I took out where I worked over the years, I made sure I had death and total and permanent disability in there. So the most amazing thing was that with this next injury that I had, I got bugger all payout from work cover because they, even though my injuries were extremely significant. So when I fell down the stairs, I hit a brick wall in front of me, and I jumped down the bottom of the stairs because I didn't want to land on my butt, because if I land on my bum, it damages the cages and rods and everything in there. It's quite painful. So when I was losing my balance, I jumped forward and I jumped the bottom 4 stairs, hit the ground really hard, and then I smashed up into the wall in front of me with my arm up in front of me to stop me from hitting my face against the wall. But what I did was I tore all my shoulder open and I tore all my right hip open. So, these things you just, this could have not have happened at work. It could have been when I was shopping or, or been in a hotel foyer, like gone out for dinner. One of my girlfriends had this massive bad accident when she went out for dinner at a restaurant. So you never know when these things are going to happen. And but just thinking, forth into the future a bit, how can you just check that these things, how can you cover yourself to make sure that you can look at, if down the track. And I'm always on my husband's case to say, can you please check in your superannuation fund that you have an updated total and permanent disability and death in there. So, and with my last one, it was enough to pay for a house off, so that takes away that financial strain and burden for me to have to go back to work ever again, which is, and most people on average, an average work cover claim incident and injury will cost around about $180,000. So that's a standard sort of claim figure. Now, if you don't have that kind of money behind you, it will just send you absolutely broke. You'll end up bankrupt.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of people really go into bankruptcy. It's not a good place to be. Losing everything's not, just because of an accident and injury. It does happen a lot. So, yeah. And this, with that in mind, we were living in Cairns, so we were away from our family when all of this happened as well. So we had really no one there. Dale's mum came up and looked after me for the first month, and then my mum came and looked after me for the second month. And but while we were up there, we had what we called orphan Christmases every year, which was amazing. So living up in far north Queensland was a really incredible place to live. We had a beautiful pool in the backyard, and we used to get all of our neighbours, all of our friends that we ever met, or anybody that just didn't know anybody, that was lonely, to come and have Christmas with us. And we used to have 25 people on average every Christmas. And it was always magical because made everybody happy. And I'd always set out that everybody have to bring something. So I wasn't having to cook because half the time, for me, I'm a chef by trade, but I love cooking. But to try and cook for 25 people would really do me in, that kind of thing nowadays. So, I still love to entertain all the time. But if I do, I get people to bring things, because there's nothing more important than everybody making their own favourite dish, bringing their food to share. They feel good. And things like that. So I always, put my hand out and say to anybody, if you've got in my neighbours, we've got a lot of single female ladies in our street as well, and one of our neighbours, he just lost his wife. So we always say, come to our house, house is open, they don't have to bring any food if they can't. But it just makes everybody feel better if you can. And sometimes it's just helping people, with a $50 voucher. If somebody needs food and they can't afford to buy anything for Christmas Day, I'd be happy to help them out, rather than things like that. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're going to come into a really unprecedented Christmas this year where everybody's hit financially hard. They've lost their houses. They've lost everything, so I think this is going to be a hard one for a lot of people, for sure.
Yeah. When you were in the depths of your recovery, how did you find the people around you reacted? So you mentioned that Dale's mum and your mum came up and helped you a little bit, but how about, your extended friend network and things like that? How did they react?
They didn't. I lost them all.
Wow.
So that was shocking. I had one friend through work who was very toxic. And that was probably my pinnacle point in the hospital. She was having an affair with somebody else, but her and her husband were standing over my bed having a fight. And I was only a couple of days after I'd woken up, and I basically told them to F off. And so I just said, that was my really big point in my life where I just said, I cannot have anybody that is really negative and really toxic in my life anymore, because I needed to focus on my health and well-being, my own sanity, to be able to improve my mindset, because I was in a bad way myself. I needed to make sure whatever I did, I had to do it that way. But I was really surprised that one of my best friends who would come and see me every day, or would go and see them every day, didn't see me at all. Not at all. So that was probably the most heartbreaking over that next year of recovery, not being able to really leave the house, not being able to go anywhere. Not having my dearest, closest friend ring me, didn't want to come and see me. It was 8 months later. She rang me one day and she said, "Oh, I've just been up the road up to Palm Cove to meet a lady who's just moved here." And I'm like, "You just drove past my house and you didn't come in and see me." Well, why would you ring me and tell me things like that? But some people were really rude and cruel, and I hear this a lot with everybody that I meet that goes through any major trauma like this, has the same thing.
Yeah.
The reason definitely would be is because a lot of people don't know how to react. They think that they're going to come to my house and they're just going to see me as a mess, and I'd be sitting there going, poor me, poor me, poor me. But, all I wanted was somebody to pop in and have a coffee. I didn't care if they stayed for 5 or 10 minutes. Just having a visitor would make my day, So I was really lucky that I lived in a cul-de-sac, and my neighbours came over and saw me every now and again, and they all had little kids at the time, so they'd pop in. The neighbour next door, his little 2-year-old, they made a car out of a box, and put the plastic, the straw, the string over his shoulder, and he comes trundling in with his little cardboard box car. Made my day. But
that's so good.
you just realise who your friends are, but that's normal. It's just because a lot of people don't know how to react, and that kind of thing. But it is really hard to deal with. I had a lot of trauma counselling over it. One of the best things, I'm going to give you a tip, if anything like this ever happens, or you have some really bad things going in your life, go and buy yourself a large diary and write out everything. Get it out of your head. Because my mum's the spiritual healer, and she did a lot of Reiki on me while I was healing, and helped me to learn to accept what was going on, accept the metal that was in my body as well. So that was a really big part of my healing journey, was not to think that I had foreign objects in my body, because that would be a highly likely reason as to why my body might reject it. So that was an interesting process to go through, which I thought was good. But there was 3 other blokes I was doing rehab with, and they actually had problems with the metal in their body. They had screws come out. They had all sorts of weird issues. So maybe she was true. But my mum's dearest friend gave me the advice was to write it all out. Get a large diary, the full page one-dayers, and just write your thoughts out. And even when I had my next accident, I did the same thing. I just followed the structure I did before because I knew what worked, and that was getting, what they say, get this shit out of your body. Just like pull it out, get it out. Because if you hold all this anger, hate, frustration, you're feeling sorry for yourself and everything. If you hold all that in and don't say anything, it's like being toxic to yourself. It's poisoning yourself. So by being able to, I couldn't say this to my husband. So my husband found it difficult because he's one of those people who wouldn't go and see his friend if things were wrong. So unfortunately, I love my husband. He's a lovely bloke, but he didn't cope either. So they found the counselling, and I found a couple of other people who was doing rehab with, really good to talk with and things like that. But that diary was amazing, So it was also the pinnacle thing that needed to be presented when I had my court case as well, because they needed the evidence to show what I was going through. And all that kind of stuff. So, and the best part about it is once all of that's over, you burn it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember at the end of my the end of my first marriage, which was incredibly toxic. I'd made a very interesting choice to marry somebody who is a borderline personality disorder with who's a narcissist and gaslighter. Choice. And when that ended, it was very, very sudden. It was like I kind of energetically, I knew something was off, and I was feeling really homesick. And, here's me at 27 years old feeling homesick. I've not lived at home for 10 years. It was just like, this is nuts, but I feel like I have to go home. And so I did. And my husband decided to go on a 2-day drinking binge instead of going to work, because that's a good thing to do. And then turns around and messages me. And my mum at that stage, she was living in a very, very small village in the middle of New Zealand. And the spot that I happened to be sleeping in was the one spot in the house where you could get mobile coverage. So it was just very freaky. And she says to me, "Oh, can I call you? I have something to talk to you about." And I'm like, okay. And he spent the next 2.5 hours confessing all of his sins. Wow. And out of our 7.5-year marriage or relationship, he'd only been celibate for 2 6-month blocks, or monogamous with me for 2 6-month blocks. And he just spread it all out. Jeez. So mentally, I went into what I called stock controller mode. I was just fact finding. I want to know about this and this and this and this. And every time I felt like something was a little bit wonky or weird, what about that? What about that? What about that? What about this relationship here? What about this situation here? And so because he was in the flow of getting that information out, I got all the answers that I required. And it was not an easy conversation to have. He was laughing maniacally all the way through it, saying, "I'm going to make you hate me."
That's terrible.
And it really messed with my head a lot. And I went, after that phone call finished, I sort of sat there for a bit, and my brother, my eldest of my brothers, had broken up with his partner 6 months beforehand. So he was at home with mum at that time. And I've gone up to him because I'd booted him out of his bed for the weekend. And I said to him, I think I just broke up with my husband.
And he's like,
what? But then I went into shock. Then I went into depression. So I call it shock depression, because it was like there was no other way to go. Next thing you know, I had no job, I had no house, I had no cat, I had no husband, I had no life, I had no friends, I had no income, I had a whole bunch of debt and nothing to show for it. And so, yeah, it was just like, boof, everything changed really, really quickly. And after 2 weeks of not being able to sleep properly, waking up every 2 hours, clutching at the walls on my knees, screaming because, I was feeling like everything was falling in on me, which is the brain's trying to process really fast and it can't. I eventually went off to the doctor and I said, look, I need something to help me sleep. And he said, are you depressed? And I said, maybe, but I just need something to help me sleep so that I can actually process what's going on in my life. And he goes, well, we should put you on antidepressants. And I'm like, no way. I just need something to help me sleep. If I can sleep a good 8 hours, I know that I can process this, because I knew that about my body. I knew that about my mind. And I'd seen the way that antidepressants affected some of my friends at uni, and I hated it. I hated the way they went really bland and numb. Okay. And I was just like, no, I don't wish to have that for me. I like being bright and bold and bubbly, but right now I'm not that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I also found really, really helpful was exactly what you said. I found a exercise book, because my mum's a teacher. Yep. And I just found an exercise book, and I just started in the middle of the night. When I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I just start writing it all down, and I didn't care how it came out. I didn't care the language. I didn't care if it was messy. I didn't care how. It was just scribbles and like fuck yous and all the rest of it. It was just everything just came out on those pages. And then a few years later, I found them and I'm looking at them going, whoa, that's some pretty intense stuff there. But it was so required. Oh, yeah. But it was absolutely required. When they say to write it down, so important just to get that stuff out of your head onto the paper so you can rest. Allow your brain to rest.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter, like if you wake up in the middle of the night and if your mind is churning, just get out of bed and write it out. Because as soon as you write it out, you'll go back to bed and it's guarantee you'll drop in the most magnificent deep sleep, because you've let it go, and that's a part of the process of letting things go. And, at this time of the year when we're talking about relationships or money, and family is, a hard thing. A lot of that, I've had to do a lot of release work on family. We have a very, you could say, family that's disjointed across all avenues, and that we have one that seems to be like a deep-seated family trait thing. It runs generations down, so common occurrences run through. So, but yeah, so we don't have a together Christmas family. Haven't really had a proper good one since I was, a young teenager, probably. So this year I'm having dinner with Dad and his wife the night before. Christmas Day we're having a quiet one just with Dale's parents, because they're in their 90s and they're very, fragile. So fragile or frail, I should say frail. Dad's in hospital at the moment. He broke his hip the other day. So, just think of all the different things. I unfortunately have severed ties with my sister. I don't talk with my sister anymore. So, won't see her for Christmas probably ever again. Who knows? So there's, we all have these sorts of things going on with our families and things like that. But one of the best things I always talk about doing all this in cans for all those years is your friends are your family. They really are.
The family you choose.
Definitely. They are the family that you choose. And, if you sit down and look at the people that you're around, you might need to make a decision. Do you need to let them go? Sometimes you need to let them go. And then sometimes you need to let your family go, So, and it's not a bad thing. That's just about standing in your own power and making a decision of controlling your own life and being around people that, like raise your vibration or make you feel better, who generally want to be in your world. So that's a really big thing. Sometimes I think some people just need to hear too. So,
absolutely.
It's not a bad thing.
I heard something the other day. I saw it, actually, I didn't hear it. I saw it on Facebook. You know, the old saying, blood is thicker than water. And it's like, that's actually been bastardized quite nicely, because it's actually the blood that you share on the battlefield is thicker than water. So it's actually the blood that we share with our brotherhood or with our friends. The experiences that we share makes it so much more important than the running of the water.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I
we
thought,
keep growing with it. You've got to grow through every experience that you go through. It's okay to be embodied in what is going on and experiencing that, and maybe having to go through grief and all sorts of things. But at some point, and the quicker you can do it, let it go and release it, and then sort of sit back and think about, well, what was the lesson there that I needed to learn? So for me, I think each time my two big accidents were, I wasn't giving myself any time. I was doing crazy jobs where it was, 60 hours a week jobs, and I was traveling a lot. Like the first one, I was only home 1 week a month for a couple of years. So I was always out on the road traveling around the entire far North Queensland region and the islands and everything. So this is when sometimes you realize your job is not everything. Your life means more, and things like that. So, even for now, with my last one, I got another total and permanent disability, and I thought, you know what, I need to take this a little bit more serious and look at how can I implement what's happened, the changes that I've been doing, how do I learn new skills, still giving myself the full attention and focus of my constant rehabilitation that's always got to go on. But just looking at how can I make incomes in other ways, how to be able to do different things. And it is possible to do everything when you put your mind to it. So, you've got to learn new skills. And I think that's, I worked in education and training all my life, so most of it. So I'm really big on, self-learning, self-education, and learning and how you can still learn new things. You can teach an 8-year-old how to use the internet and how to use Instagram and how to do different things. Like last year, Dale's mum's must be 84. And we taught her how to use Instagram. She's like, why didn't you show me this years ago? Now I can see all my family. I'm like, see, Dale? Told you your mum wanted to have a look.
I remember, like, even before I left New Zealand back in 2010, I taught my grandmother how to use the text messaging and even predictive texting. She was like, oh, this is great, because she was just the person who would just pick up the phone. This whole text messaging thing is just like, no way. But once she got her head around that, it was great. And like now she's on Facebook and that sort of stuff, because she's realized that it's a fabulous way of keeping in touch with people. Whereas she used to have some very definite points of views around Facebook, how it just causes a lot of trouble, and and it's like there's like big court cases and things because people on Facebook have said something or done something wrong or whatever, and they've splashed their dirty laundry all over Facebook. And it's just like, now she realizes Facebook is what you make of it.
It's meant to be social. That's what it is all about. And I was the same. I hated Facebook and Instagram, and I'm not a big Instagram fan. But I do love Facebook, and this is where I've learned to love social media. And my husband for years was telling me to get on Facebook. Now he's like, get off it.
Get off.
But I think, when you look at like what you've done, Lorene, you look at your shows and all that kind of stuff, these are all really simple things that you can actually learn. And everything nowadays, like technology, you don't need a university degree. Everything's actually provided for you on all of these different platforms on how to make things. Everything's got a drag and a drop, and like you can create things in 10 minutes. And this is what I love. Like every time I look at something, I'm like, wow, and I have a go at it, and I have a lot of fun with it. And I think the most important thing here was I needed a new hobby, and this is why I dived into the social media world. When I was going through the recovery of these last surgeries, because I had 4 major surgeries in 8 months in 2018 and 19. So I had a left shoulder operation done. They had to re-anchor the shoulder back in because I completely destroyed it. But they damaged that main ulnar nerve that runs down my left arm and shoulder. So then I had to have the elbow cut open, like right across down through here, where they decompress all the nerves in the hands. And then I had to have the hand cut open through here to lengthen all the tendons in the fingers, because with the ulnar nerve, it curls all the hands over. And then I lost the use of the fingers. But when I was going through all these surgeries, my mum was dying as well. So not only did I have like all the trauma of me going through a surgery, as soon as I was healing from one surgery, on the 6 to 8 week after every surgery, I was back in having another surgery for something. And the hip one was awful. That was so painful. That was like having shotgun wounds through the leg. So I thought, what am I going to do? So I started learning how to use Facebook. I started learning how to use Instagram, and I loved it. I was like, oh, this is different, and I used a couple of American paid platforms originally to learn how to, build a Facebook page, how to set things up properly, but just had to learn it, and learn to love it, and when you learn to love it, it's actually a really amazing place to be, where a lot of people say to me, oh, I just hate it. And I said, the more you say you hate things,
that's what you're going to create.
So the more you start to learn to say, I will, you will do things. If you say, I can't, you can't, won't, and don't do things. So whatever you say those kinds of things. And
I have a happy little phrase around the word can't. I say the only difference between can't and can is the letter T. I quite like tea. I can take a cup of tea, thanks.
Lovely. Yeah. So I think finding yourself a hobby is a really big thing to do. And just touching back on, talking about counselling, is the counsellors always said to me, what's the one thing that's missing out of your life that you used to always love doing and that you haven't done for a long time? And I went, oh my God. All my younger years, because I'm 51 now, I used to love sitting. I grew up in Bright in northeast Victoria, up in the snowfields, little small country town. And I always loved sitting by the river, because there are 3 big rivers that came in through the town. So just listening to those rivers running all the time, I would just sit there and meditate after school every day. Or I'd sit by the river and fish after school every day, catch a fish, take it home for dinner. And I used to love that.
Like this one.
Oh, that's a coral trout painted. So, and then, with my spinal injuries, I actually learnt to paint. So I've sent, Lorene's going to show you a couple of paintings. So I painted about, I think in the first 12 months, I think it was about 130 to 160 paintings in bed. And this one I did at an art class that I did at the Tanks Art Centre in Cairns by an Adelaide artist. His name's Gary Duncan, and he's really good. I spent a week with him. But I actually learnt how to paint upside down with the boards in my hands, and I would paint like that. I did, so many of them. I gave them all away. Most of my paintings originally, all the first ones, I kept most of my first ones, and I did a lot of tropical things living in Cairns. So we had so many green tree frogs in our backyard because we had a beautiful big tropical backyard. So I loved frogs. So I would just, I can't draw at all, but I can freehand paint. So I don't
You're
know.
Amazing.
It's really hard. I don't know. So it's a bit like cooking. I don't follow recipes. I just throw food together and it tastes great. Let me tell you a story about this one. This was a spiritual, for me, my painting became a real spiritual journey. Because it was so beautiful and warm in Cairns at night, we had a lovely big outdoor area, and that became my art studio. And because I was so drugged up to the eyeballs in pain medications, I quite often would sleep during the day, and then I'd wake up at night, and I was I'd take some more pain medication, but I was just creative. So I'd actually stay up all night until the sun rose, and I would paint. But the background on this one, I'd often paint the background, and then like something would come to me and tell me what I needed to put on this canvas. But this canvas took 6 months for the picture to come out on it, and I kept picking it up, looking at it, and I didn't know what to paint on it. And I'm like, I started getting frustrated with this canvas, but I love the color on the background, so I didn't want to change that. I'm like, I love that, don't change it. So, and this is the hard thing about when you're an artist is sometimes you've just got to put your painting down and leave it and walk away for a while.
That's a bit like life.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've just got to put things down for a little bit.
Yeah.
And walk away from it. Go have a cup of tea. See, there's the tea again.
There's the tea.
Have the tea, and then maybe something will pop in. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. Maybe it'll take next week or maybe next month, but it'll be there,
It'll be there. Yeah. So 6 months later, that picture just came into my head. Now, we had an incredible backyard full of heliconias. So these are actually real life drawings of the heliconias. Like I said, I can't draw, but what I did was I traced the outline of them on a bit of tracing paper. So they're the natural shape of the heliconias that came out of my garden in the backyard. We had 12 different varieties of heliconias in our backyard, so that we had beautiful flowers. And by the stage when I did a lot of these types of ones. I actually sold them all because most people bought them all from me. And I had 6 restaurants around Cairns that I used to take all the paintings around, swap them around every 4 to 5 weeks, and they would sell them all for me. And I basically just fund, like art, you only just fund it, so I was making enough money to pay for the paints and the canvas and having a really good time. Oh, yeah, that one's up the right way. So that was one.
I was just thinking, did I put it upside down?
No, that's the way it is. That hangs down. So this is one of my first ones. So when I learned to do the background, it was more of a messier wash, it's more of it, you still see a brush strokes, whereas the others, the better I got at it, I learned to really blend the colours and things like that. So yeah, so I had lots of fun doing those because everybody up in Cairns loves the feature paintings and things like that. I've got some in the shed, which I don't know what to do with it. So if anybody is looking for some of these, I've got a few of them here. Otherwise, I'm going to paint over them. I've just managed to pull the paints out of the shipping container last weekend, so I'm going to start painting again. So was there any more? Oh, you might have.
We got some more.
I did lots of frogs, as you can see. I love the frogs. And parrots.
This next one is one of my favourite ones.
Yeah. So
I love your parrots.
I started the macaw parrots, because quite a few of my friends have got parrots up in Cairns, and the first one I did, it was all multicoloured. And then I thought, I better just check what colours they are. So I've kept the multicoloured one. It's in the back of my toilet door. But
I love that one, by the way.
Then I started doing them. But so that was the second one I did, I think. That might have been the second or third one. So I did a few of those. I think I did about 6 of them all up, of the different parrots. So they were a lot of fun. Just loved the colours. And then I started doing abstract art. So when I did the Tanks Art Escape, I started learning a lot about abstract art. So had a lot of fun with that for many years. I spent a whole week doing one with a guy from Sydney and went down to his studio for a few days as well. And then the next big one I did with Gary Duncan, who's a great South Australian abstract artist as well. So yeah, it's enjoyable. It's all about adding lots of layers and things like that. So that's the Bird of Paradise, which you get a lot in Adelaide as well. So, but always loved the Bird of Paradise in Cairns. We had them in our gardens as well. So there was a set on those two. There was a matching pair. Another frog. It was one of my earlier ones.
I love the froggies.
I love the green tree frogs. I did, a lot of what do you call them?
Frangipanis.
Frangipanis. Funny, that one actually came up for sale on Facebook a couple of years later.
Really?
The house, and I was like, oh, that looks like one of my paintings. I'm like, oh, it is.
And I thought we'd just finish off with the paintings with this beautiful one. All
that
your
was
little
at
bits
a
and bobs.
art gallery. They had, so I just popped that one in there. So, but I used to take them down to the markets all the time. They did get damaged. Never really sold them at the markets. It's a lot of work to take them to markets. But I always found putting them in restaurants. The restaurants loved having regular artwork on their walls and things like that. But it just gave me some way of removing worrying about what was going on with me, and just focused all the energy on, drawing and painting things. I gave most of them away, sold quite a few, had a lot of people, commissioned to do quite a few paintings as well, mainly all the heliconias. But yeah, that's good. I'm looking forward to doing a few more here soon.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because I look at how my healing journey went as well. And it's like that the times when I required the most and I was going through the biggest healing moments in my life was the times that I would often pick up my crochet and I would just start crocheting, and it was like I'd be in front of the TV and I'd be just crocheting. And it was like, I don't really know. It was just like I had to be creative, but I had to do something that was going to challenge my mind in a way that was not a pressure. It was like, it just...
You're going to have to teach me how to crochet next.
And
the next thing I want to learn.
Oh, cool. So yeah, it's one of those things that when I'm in a really good, happy place, I don't really feel the requirement to crochet. And it's interesting at the moment because my house isn't really big enough for me to crochet, which sounds a bit queer, but it's just like when I have my box of wool out, it just takes up half my lounge.
Okay.
But certainly when I'm in a happy place, I don't feel the requirement to be doing the crochet. But when I'm not so happy, when I'm processing a lot of stuff, when I'm moving through shifts and changes with relationships and things like that, that's when the crochet comes out. So thank you for highlighting that to me, because I didn't actually really consciously think about that until just now. Isn't that funny? The things we use to cope with.
Yeah, there's having a hobby, even if you're just trying a few different hobbies, you could ask a lot of friends, what do they do, and a lot of people are doing mosaics or all sorts of things. Some spotlight places used to do all sorts of different things. Bunnings always does different things. There's lots of things you can do. So I think it's just getting out and finding some different things for you to do, and just having fun.
Just in case you forgot.
Just enjoying, it's just finding a hobby does a lot for you. It takes your mind off everything, even just going out for a walk in the forest and things like that. Getting some good fresh air and, grounding with the earth and things like that. So, but a big part of my healing journey has always been having a lot of healing, like spiritual and energetic healing has been huge. So, I've always had a lot of Reiki healing as well, in particular because of the extensive of the injury. So I always found that worked really well. I had a really incredible spiritual healing one night at my my grandparents' house. And did I tell you this one day? I can't remember if I told you.
You have, but I'd love for the audience to hear the story because I really like it. It really freaked us out, actually. It took quite a long time to get over it. This was probably my first real experience of entities in the room doing an actual healing on me. And we were visiting my grandfather's house because we didn't think he was going to make it through that year. And Nana had passed on probably 10, 15 years earlier. And Mum and I went down there for the weekend just before Christmas. And Dale was I was meeting him in Adelaide. And it wasn't long after I'd had my spinal fusions done, my second one. Okay. So that was September. I had that last one done, and must have been, first week of December or something we went down there. So I was not in a good way. Wasn't traveling very well. I was extremely heavily medicated, and but I had Mum looking after me while I was traveling. And so
I'd gone to sleep. This was the night before I was about to leave Bairnsdale and get on a train and go and catch a flight to Adelaide. And I had gone to sleep and I was in Nana's bed and Mum was in the room next to me and Papa was on the room on the other side of me. And before I had my surgery, I always loved to sleep on my stomach. But since I've had my spine fused, I just can't sleep on my stomach. But that night, I just feel like sometimes I just feel like I want to lay on it for 5 minutes just to get comfortable and then I'll roll over. Well, anyway, I think I might have just dozed off. And then I felt like two hands go down into the base of my spine and grab me like really deep, like inside my, spine and grab my spine. And they shook me across the bed. Like I actually physically was getting thrashed from one side of the bed to the other. And then it pulled it up like this. And it felt like they were reefing my spine out of my lower back. It was really horrific, but also within a second, that pain just went, it was gone. And I just sat there for a second and I was trying to process what had happened. But I was also fucking freaking out. And I was screaming, like literally I was screaming and I was thinking, where's Mum? Why is she not coming into the bedroom? And back then I used to smoke. I don't smoke anymore, but I think I was about 38 at the time when that happened. And so I freaked out and, I yelled out like, let me go, please leave the room, go away, because I was freaking out. And I got out of bed and I ran outside. I had about 3 cups of tea. I smoked about half a packet of cigarettes and didn't want to go back to bed. I shit myself. But I felt good. I actually felt good. The pain had gone out of my back, which was just so weird to not have this, really awful pain from having, rods and cages put in your back, because that second surgery was an 8-hour one too, I think it was. And so I got back into bed. I think it must have been about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I read a magazine. And I'm like, I've got to go to sleep because I really need at least a couple hours sleep. So I've got to get up at, I think it was 6 o'clock to go and catch this train. Anyway, just as I was starting to nod off, I saw 3 people standing at the end of my bed. And they were very clear, figures in the room. And I just asked them to leave me alone and told them that I was really scared, but, grateful that the pain had gone. But, I did ask them to leave because I was just so terrified. And when I woke up, Mum's told me what happened. You've obviously had a spiritual healing. They've come in to actually try and help, relieve that pain that was inside you and that kind of stuff. So, having Mum as a spiritual energetic healer probably calmed my nerves a bit, but I was still rattled the next day. And I got on the train, I rang Dale and he said, how you going? Because he thought I'd be in a mess by the time I got, on the train going to Melbourne. And I said, I feel amazing. And he goes, what? I said, I've only had some Panadol this morning. And he's like, what? Actually, I said, oh, you're not going to believe this. Like, you're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you because you're going to think I'm weird. When I told him, he just couldn't believe it. But what he couldn't believe was that I wasn't in immense pain. And I was using 2 walking sticks at the time as well, and just had some Panadol. I got to Adelaide. By the time I was able to actually lift my bag as well. Got onto the plane, got to Adelaide, and he picked me up, and I was still in no pain. He just couldn't believe it. It was just life-changing. So, it was one of those unexplained weird things. So, can't question it because, obviously it was meant to happen. So, if you're open to things like that, I suppose things will happen for sure. So, yeah.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah, whether you like it or not. So, always open to trying anything new, giving anything a go. For those of you who don't know much about Lorene or have never experienced her healing sessions, I thoroughly recommend it because I've had 4 different types now, I suppose, haven't I? Different types of sessions with you, and they've all been amazing. it's just I just can't explain how each of them work. I think you've got to experience it so you know how you wave your magic.
It's extra sparkly magic at the moment because we've got Christmas lights too.
Absolutely, yeah. And just recently I had COVID, so she just did a cleansing for me to clear that energy out and that kind of thing, because I felt absolutely dreadful. So it made a really big difference. And I think a little while back, I was over a year ago now, actually, July 2021, when I had my third vaccine. I had an energy clearing session with Lorene, and that actually attacked my ovaries. And I had really extreme pain in my ovaries for about 7 days, I think it was. And then Lorene heard what was going on. She said, come down, and cleared it within, as soon as she finished the session, I got up and I walked out of there, that pain was gone. It was, I can't explain it. You waved your magic again. So, if you know anybody that needs anything like that, and it works really well. And she's even done a clearing on my business, and instantly, as soon as we got off the call, my business just took off, and I'm like, wow, this is weird stuff. Very powerful. You are very powerful. What you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Wasn't expecting that. I'm all blushing.
Yeah, you are amazing. There's no doubt there. So I highly recommend anybody to book a call with you and just see what you can unlock for them, for sure.
Yeah. Well, the other part of why every session's been different for you is because that's how it works. Every session is different, and even when you're receiving the same process, because you've had the CJAB session a couple of times now, and each one of those was different because they were dealing with different aspects of what was affecting you at the time. And that's the beauty of what I do, is you can just, because as we clean and we clear, we're lifting those layers, so we never have to deal with those particular layers again. And so you're just dealing with the new stuff that comes up that has been there from different lifetimes or whatever. Yes. And, those other interactions that we have with people in our everyday life, or, especially at this time of year, talking about Christmas and stuff, there's a lot of those old hurt energies come up. If we've lost a relationship or something around this time of year, that can feel pretty rough and hard at this time. So I've got specific processes that help people to release old relationships, whether they be romantic or not. A lot of those, I learned that I actually do somatic healing. How cool is that? But that's to do with your childhood healing of your childhood trauma, all that sort of stuff. So that's something that I also do. I just didn't know what the name was until just recently.
Yeah. I think we all, I was listening to Dr. Espen just recently, because he does a lot in our group as well. And he was talking the other day about that 99% of all of our problems all stem back through our childhood, our generational stuff that keeps carrying through. But whatever could be going on in our life now could still be being carried forward from when we were children, and that's been a really big thing around my sister and I. That's been a huge one, that she can't move forward or work through or let go of, or that kind of thing. So, but that breaks families. That's for sure. A lot of stuff that does happen when they're younger, and you just think, I really don't know, if you have such bad things like that as a childhood, go and let it go. It's because you deserve your best life. Put on this planet to live a life, and live our best lives wherever possible. I have bad days. I have bad days. I had a bad one on Saturday. Went and had a massage, but I came unstuck, and I was like, nearly couldn't get off the bed and couldn't get dressed. I was like, oh shit! All right, I'm going home, and I'm going to make a cup of tea, something to eat. And I hopped into bed and just relaxed for the day, and And I felt great the next day. So sometimes you've just got to honor what's going on, give yourself time instead of beating yourself up over it, or remove yourself from that situation.
Yeah.
And go, even if it is go and buy yourself a nice coffee, if you can, go to a place or go to a park, go and put some meditation music on. There are really great free apps that you can put on your phone that help you do meditation to go to sleep, do thought processes and changes, your thoughts while you're sleeping. So you can actually fall asleep with those going in your, with your earpods on. And even when you do sleep with things like that, that actually still can reprogram your thoughts and things like that while you're actually sleeping.
Yeah.
So I've done so much.
Yeah, I know.
I've had a lot of brain retraining and I've had a lot of brain rewiring by, very specific specialists and things like that, especially in my last injury, because my left arm, all the damage that I had in there, it was like my arm was amputated. So I lost the use of my left hand. So I had to rewire the brain to think about as if it was still there instead of not being there. So and then I realized I got to learn more about how the brain is really working and functioning and how we allow, pain to can be really take over our body. But if we learn how to use our brain to rewire it, things can change. So yeah, a lot of things around life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I show people when they come in for sessions. Like, we go through an exercise right at the beginning of any healing, and we go through something called the expanding out exercise, where you go within first, and then you acknowledge the fact that you are 99.999% space, and that all of these lovely little atoms are just floating around doing their thing, and they are all shifting and changing all the time. So nothing is stuck or stagnant in your body. Absolutely nothing. It is all moving, shifting, changing all the time. And it's up to us how we direct our thoughts, which is like the energetic instructions to those atoms to go, yes, I need you to go here or here or here. And I mean, like you said before, if we can consistently say, I'm stuck or I'm broken or, I can't do this, that's exactly the messaging that you're giving your little atoms, and they'll go, okay, that's what we'll do. And it's like, I was chatting with the lovely gentleman today, and he said, yeah, nah, I'm just waiting to die. And I said, well, that's cool. I said, if that's what you're really thinking and that's what your thoughts are, then that's what will happen. That's what you'll choose.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh. And I said, our thoughts create our reality, and I said to him, my 86-year-old grandma, she still gets out and does bloody 5-day horse tricks and all that sort of stuff. So she's like going, she doesn't think that she can't do stuff. She's not sitting back in her little house doing her knitting and, thinking that she can't do anything like hop on a horse and go for a 5-day horse trick anymore. No way. She kept working until she was 81. And the only reason why she stopped is because it started interfering with her 5-day horse tricks. So she's really is a true testament. And I mean, the number of things she's done to herself over the years, thanks to the horses. She's had them in broken bones. She's had carpal tunnel surgery. She's had all these things, and she still just gets up and does what she loves to do.
Absolutely. We all have different things that go wrong with us or in our body, or different health issues or whatever. Mine's always been about the bones. I don't know what the message quite is about the bones, but got any suggestions there?
I'll figure it out later.
So, but at least you can always, recover, heal, and move through things if you really want, need, and desire it.
Yeah.
And then when you learn new skills, like, one of the biggest things I've learned since this last one was, letting go of my career, but then realizing that there was a lot more out there that's a lot better. So, and then I realised, Jesus, why didn't I do this 20 years ago? But we're not meant to do things until we're ready to learn it too, because that's a big conversation I have with a lot of my people, new friends that I meet. And a lot of the friends like you and I, we connected through online, through other friends, and that's the beauty of using social media really well too, is actually really connecting with people properly. So
absolutely.
and
there is one little piece there that I'd just like to grab from what you were saying before about just like going off for a walk or something like that. So with this sort of focus over the next few podcasts around Christmas and tools and tips for Christmas, one of the things you can do, and I actually saw this modeled in my family, we don't often get together, all of us. We are very much spread out around New Zealand and Australia, and so when we all come together, it can feel quite intense because we're all quite different personalities. Some of us are quiet, some of us are a bit more loud and bolshy, and there's a lot of energies going on there. And my gorgeous uncle, when we went over for my granddad's funeral, his dad's funeral, and he was just like, yeah, I think I'm going to go find a couple of geocaches. And I'm like, geocaching, what's that? And he goes, yeah, I'm just going to go for a walk. And I was like, can I come? And he's like, yeah, sure. So we went off for a walk, just the two of us. And, we went geocaching. Actually, there was another one of my uncles went along too. And we just went out together, and we just, all three of us had a bit of a break from the rest of the family dynamics for that little period of time. So it's like, it's okay to say, I'm just going to go for a walk for a bit, find that family member or whatever that you do get along with, either let them know or invite them along and just go off for a wander, have a breather. You don't like, if you still feel like it's something that you have to do to be in amongst the family for Christmas and for New Year's or however you celebrate it, it's okay to, go for a wander as well. To have that emotional and physical energetic break, to give yourself the space to have some deep breaths, expand out, do the, smell the roses or whatever.
You can say you're full. I'm so full. I need to go for a stretch around the block for a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out, even if it's for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So
and you'll be surprised at how much easier it will be mentally to cope with those different personalities and families, because quite often, and this is something that lovely Dr. John Demartini talks about, is the people who are close to us in relationship are the ones that will actually be the greatest mirrors for the things that we need to work on. So whether that be in romantic relationship or family, they'll quite often show us the things that we require to work on within ourselves, which is why it irritates us so much to be around them sometimes, because it's like, we don't want to have to deal with all those things. It's like, stop pointing out the things about me that I don't like. So when you start sort of comprehending it in that way, those things that are irritating you and triggering you are often the things that you're requiring to do some healing on. It's like, so what if instead of getting pissed off about that around the other person or towards the other person, get out your little pen and paper, write it down. Okay, this is something I have to do some work on later. Mental note, thank you. And then you just create that space of allowance between you and that family member to just go, I see you. Thank you for showing me that.
Yeah. I think another thing to think about too is, because a lot of time we get busy in our day and forget to do things, is actually I use my calendar in my phone all the time. So I do blank out certain things during the day and the week to do things. And then the non-negotiables. So it could be when you wake up in the morning, you might want to listen to a really good audible around something that helps you with changing your mindset or put you in a space or frame of mind. So that first half an hour, don't turn your phone on to search social media. Use that first part of that to set your intentions for the day, to your thought process, how you need to feel, and those kinds of things. So audibles are absolutely fantastic for that. some really good ones there. Definitely, thinking about that. And if it's something you can do every afternoon, go for a walk. Even if you're working quite often, you don't think about, well, how can I set some time away for myself? And so when I went back to work, I set that structure in place. So when I came home from work, I painted for an hour to an hour and a half every afternoon. Dinner didn't get done till 7 o'clock at night. So I made sure that I put myself first. So that's when I really learnt the power of setting your intention, do something for yourself, because if you keep allowing everything to be busy in your life, you're not putting yourself first ever. So when you start, like, busy people will make things happen, because you can shift something and everything just keeps moving around it. But if you keep it all locked the same, nothing will move. So if you start implementing some little strategies, like putting that in your calendar and say, all right, at 5:30 every night, I'm going to go for a walk. Do something for yourself. Put some nice music on, clear your head. Sometimes, like, I was working a little bit in the city a few weeks back, and I was driving up through the back of Greenhill Road, avoiding the traffic, coming home on my own, just meandering up the hill, away from the traffic. So it clears my mind. But so by the time I got home, I was like,
Yeah.
So just the little things. Sometimes you just need to think about, what can you do in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was something that was coming up in the reading on, like, the general reading on the Find You Fridays podcast this last week, was this 7 days, which we're now in the middle of. It's all about nurturing you. It's all about being very kind and gentle and soft, being aware that there's going to be a lot of those trigger points coming up right now, and just nurture you. Be mindful about balancing out those masculine and feminine energies. Be your softness, be your potency, but be your softness too. And one of the things that happens so often is, the busier we get, and especially at this time of year, I've been in many retail sectors at this time of year where it just gets busier and busier, and your hours are extended and you're working long hours, and the pressure is on to make your sales targets and all of that sort of stuff. And in different areas, it's like they want everything now, and you can't get it now. And there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
That one of the things that drops first is the nurturing of us. It's one of the things we as women are really, really good at letting go first, so that we can make sure the kids are okay, that we can make sure our husbands and the house is done, and that auntie up the road's okay, and that grandma down the other side's all right. And we're so busy focusing on everybody else and everything else that this beautiful being gets lost. And then she gets grumpy, and then she gets then everybody
yeah, that's so true. So make sure you take self-care this year. Or if you know somebody else is really struggling, reach out and just say, are you okay? Some people just need a hug. A hug goes a long way.
Absolutely agree. And certainly, if you know anybody who has had an injury, I saw this, as you mentioned, it happens a lot, and I saw this in my time in the disability sector. So often they'll have this really big, healthy friendship group. They'll go through something where it's an acquired injury, and suddenly their friendship group disappears. And they're very lost and very alone and lonely, especially if they don't have family. And, if they've got family, it's not quite so bad. Like if they've got kids and grandkids floating around. But even then, it can get clunky, And, so if you know somebody who has had an injury, make some time just to pop in and say hi, and just check in on them. Even if you're sending them messages, it's at least it's something.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you for this beautiful conversation today.
Absolutely. So, of course, Tanya is wonderful about knowing about, empowering people to, and like enhance their businesses on social media and all of that sort of stuff. She's also my beautiful water queen. So if you wish to know anything about Kangen water or Enagic or social media and how to really get your business humming on social media, hit Tanya up. Her details are in the show notes.
Thank you.
And she will certainly set you on the right path with that. And of course, we may get her back on another show, maybe in the early new year, to talk about superannuation and other of those topics that, don't often get talked about on these sorts of shows. But I think it's important.
It is important to know, just to realize what your rights are and things like that, because a lot of people don't think about, registering a accident when it's happened at work or things like that. So I love talking about that because it's a can of worms that nobody really knows about. And I've had 2 very major work cover claims, and so it is really important to know your rights as far as if you're working and things like that. But superannuation is a really big one for sure. It'll save
absolutely.
You. It really will save you financially if you do it properly. So
beautiful.
Thank you guys. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we know, if you're watching on YouTube at the moment, please feel free to like and subscribe. I'd be very, very grateful. One day we might get to 1,000 subscribers and we might actually be able to monetize. Wouldn't that be nice?
Love your magic.
And of course, I'll be back on Friday for Find You Fridays, the reading show. And I absolutely love what Debbie's just said. She says Kangen all the way. She's a fellow Kangen girl. She knows what it's all about.
It's magic.
I found out, so I ended up with bleach on my hands in the very end of my shift today. And so I've come home smelling like bleach. And I'm like, how do I get rid of the smell of bleach? And so I actually gave it just a quick scrub in the good old, beauty water runoff, the 4. And I was just like, that's dropped it down quite a lot. How funny is that?
It's really is amazing. Yeah, because I go swimming at the local heated pool. And when I come home, I absolutely reek of chlorine. And if I just have a shower at the, heated pool because I'm going out doing something afterwards, I can still walk in the door and I can smell it oozing out of my skin. But if I shower in the Anaspa, which is the beauty water, it actually cleans it off my skin. I get out of the shower and I cannot smell it at all. It's amazing. So
I was absolutely astounded because I was like searching on good old Google, and it's like, how do I get rid of the smell of bleach? And they're like, scrub your hands with vinegar. And I was like, wow, I happen to know vinegar is sitting at around about a 4.0 thereabouts pH. I wonder if this will work.
Well, it's like a toner, so it sort of works in a similar type of thing. So
there we go.
There you go. Lovely.
Alrighty, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I'm super, super grateful for all of you from now and into the future. Be kind to yourself, and we'll catch you on Friday. Bye-bye, everybody.